Hopefully you all can hear me. I really do appreciate it. And of course, members of the council. So I'm Brad Miller, I'm your county attorney. For those who don't know, the county attorney is your prosecutor, your district attorney in other states. That's what we're called. But really, thank you so much, Mayor and members of this council for this opportunity today. I really do appreciate your leadership in this town. I think your reputation and the things that this town is doing is going out to, I think, the rest of Pinal County. But really, I'm here today to talk about public safety. And really, public safety is a team sport. It is a joint effort. And so what we wanted to do today is to present some data. But what you probably don't know is last week, myself and members of our team actually went out into your community. We knocked on about 110 doors to get a sense of how the community feels regarding public safety. And really, it's not for the purpose of judging you. In fact, it's the purpose of judging my office. So I went around. Most people don't know who I am or what we do. But we want to see how we're doing, how your community feels. And so we actually gave them a survey. And I want to give you the results of that here today. But the biggest thing we wanted to highlight was not only how the community feels, but whether the data matches that feeling in the community. And I think what's interesting with this community is it does pretty well, and we're going to talk about that. So the residents told us that their top concern at 45% was drug issues. And I think that was reiterated tonight, followed by general crime and safety at about 25%. This clear signal sends and tells me that families in Superior want us to focus on the root causes of crime, especially the flow of drugs that can impact neighborhoods, schools, families. And of course, we are already prioritizing these cases and are ready to work even more closely with your police department and of course the sheriff's department to keep the streets of Superior safe. On the positive side, because we want to talk about that also, is that 65% of the respondents felt very safe in your community in the town of Superior. And 25% expressed just some level of concern. Our goal, of course, is to raise that number, where more people feel safe, but that is a pretty substantial number. Now, on immigration-related issues, we want to talk about this. I know it's a political football right now, but I think it's important that we address some of these difficult issues. 80% of the Superior residents that we spoke to indicated that immigration-related issues are important to them. At the same time, a strong 70% say they supported expanding resources for the county attorney's office to keep our community safe. And I think the immigration-related issues are related to the issues of drug trafficking, fentanyl trafficking, and how drugs actually get into our community. Now, residents also preferred an enforcement-first approach. 60% preferred a tougher on prosecution stance versus a soft on crime approach or a diversion first approach. And then the survey also showed that 45% had some trust in leadership and focuses on transparency. Now I want to get to the final portion before we get into the actual data. I believe, based upon the survey results, that the Superior residents gave us really a clear roadmap of what they wanted from the council, from myself, and I think from the police department and from everybody in our community, and that's to focus on the issues of drugs, enforce the law, and give offices the resources needed to protect their families. And of course, I'm here to partner with you to ensure that is done. So let's follow up, and I would like to follow up to see how potential and other programs are working, and we would like to work closely with your police chief in order to do that. So let's get into the data. So what we did is I wanted to see if there are any trends, if we could identify anything, if there were potential patterns. And what we found was that the community is doing fantastic. There's actually a 50% drop in crime over the past 3 years. And you're going to see that here in the data. In 2025, we had, and these are I was talking to the police chief before this meeting, and he has some data on incidents, calls, other things like that. I want to talk, this data is just related to prosecutions that my office handled. So last year in 2025, there were 27 felony prosecutions, 36 misdemeanor prosecutions. And what I tried to do when I came into office at the beginning of 2025 is really to prioritize the main things. Because I believe a lot of the crime is concentrated in the top 5%, related to violent crime, repeat offenders, drug offenders, and crimes against children. That's why in 2025, my office established its first special victims unit to focus directly on prosecuting crimes against children. And we really wanted to prioritize those violent criminals, because I believe if we can focus on those and those repeat offenders, then your numbers are going to continue to drop. And I think that's what we've seen in 2025 compared to 2024. 2025, the crime profile was really related to violent offenses, public order violations, but also drug offenses. In 2025, there were actually 8 aggravated assault prosecutions, dangerous drug prosecutions, marijuana, and drug paraphernalia. Now, if you can see at this map, we can actually get down to the street level. We find most of the crime actually is right along that frontage road, along the 60, and also along Main Street, which shouldn't be a shock because that's where most people are. And of course, that's where a lot of the businesses are. In addition, we saw DUIs, aggravated DUIs, suspended license violations, excessive speed. But really, the concentration of crime is on those violent offenses. Now, I want to go to 2024, because this is going to show you a really stark difference. And if you remember, there were 66 cases, 27 felonies in 2025. So let's go to 2024. And and any member of the public, if you want access to these slides, we'll have them for you. You can download them and you can actually see what's going on in your community down to the street level. So let's go to 2024. Here, I'm sure you can see there are a lot more dots on this screen. There were a total of 96 cases in 2024. And here's the breakdown. 44 felonies, 47 misdemeanors. But here's what the crime profile shows, is a broad mix of violent, drug-related, property, and public order offenses. Some aggravated assaults, dangerous drug cases. They were much more dispersed, not focused on necessarily on those violent issues. 2024 also showed these types of crimes: violent crime, drug activity, property crime, and of course some traffic-related offenses. Major offense themes, again, a mixed severity. As I told you, in my office, and we started in 2025, we want to focus really on the violent crime. Now here's where it gets really, really interesting. I want to compare it to 2023. And here's where I think this town should be very proud. Proud of your police chief, proud of the police department, and proud of what you and this town council is doing. Because I want to show you 2023. Give you a second to look at that. 2023, 134 cases. So think about that, a 50% drop in 3 years. And I think that's due to a number of things. Sometimes it's hard to tell on the data specifically why. I think if we had more data points and maybe more time, some better analytics, maybe we can get down to those things. But I think in the end, this deals with focusing on those violent criminals. What we've found, I've been a prosecutor 18 years, both on the civilian side and in the Marine Corps. And I think what we find is that 5% of people tend to commit most of the crime. You see repeat, repeat, repeat. I know a lot of us have seen repeat offenders on the news, not necessarily here in Arizona, but other states where a person has been let out of prison 13, 14 times for felonies and committing violent crimes. Well, that's something that we do not do here in Pinal County. We do take a tough stance, especially on repeat offenders, especially on violent repeat offenders, where we throw them in prison and keep them away from you. That's something that we focus on. And I think the reason why we're seeing such a stark drop in that is because we're focusing on those, spending our resources and our time on those to eliminate those repeat offenders, violent offenders, and drug offenders. So here's the mix: 63 felonies, 63 misdemeanors. And you can see the crime is all over. High volume, broad category baseline. One of the other things that we focus on in 2025 is to make sure that those violent or repeat offenders aren't just getting slaps on the wrist. They're serving real time. And that goes for those folks who are even involved in drug crimes. Another thing that we focused on in 2025 is really focusing on sting operations. I know we've had multiple sting operations related to crimes against children in our community, and we really prioritize them. In 2025 alone, I think we ran 4 or 5 sting operations. In each of those operations, we took an average of about 8 to 12 people attempting to traffic children out of our community. So think about that. Even if we got rid of 30 to 40 individuals, I think that's a huge win for our community. That's something that we're going to continue to focus on. I will say for the town of Superior, we don't see those types of issues. It's really related to drugs. All right, let's get back on track here on the slides. So here's really kind of the conclusion here. 2023 sets the baseline for Superior's 3-year trend. High volume, wide category diversity, substantial drugs, public disorder, violent offenses, and of course, this includes multiple serious felonies, disorderly conduct enforcement, and notable presence of sexual and family-related crimes. As you can see, we didn't have those in 2025 because those people had been taken out of the community. And of course, you'll have access to these slides. Here's our 3-year trend from 134 to 96 to 66. And here's where I'd like to say to Chief, thank you very much for all the hard work that you're doing. I think you should be very, very proud of what is happening in this community, but I think we want to continue to work to make these numbers and drive these numbers even less. But there's a lot of good things happening in this town. You know, like I said, I knocked on, myself and my team knocked on about 110 doors. And what we found is people love living here. People love the community. People love the small knit nature of it. But of course, they still do have concerns, drug abuse, issues of drug trafficking. And that's something I think we continue to work on in this community. But I think it's because you have a small town and people care about this community. You know, I even saw a lot of rebuilds, remodels. So that's good, injecting new lifeblood into the town. I hope that these numbers will continue to push down, and I hope that we can continue to make Superior one of the safest towns in all of the county.